Right now, as I record this, explosions are still being heard across Tehran. Missiles are in the air over Tel Aviv, and a narrow strip of water in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, has just effectively been shut down by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, cutting off roughly 20% of the world's entire daily oil supply. CNN confirmed this morning that oil has crossed $100 per barrel for the first time since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. This is not a background event. This is not a slow-burning crisis. According to Reuters, over 1,332 people have now been killed since the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury on February 28th. The war is 10 days old, and the financial markets are shaking at their foundations. Because while the bombs fall on Tehran's oil depots, and while the Strait of Hormuz sits closed to tanker traffic, and while Qatar's energy minister is warning that Gulf states may be forced to declare force majeure and halt all exports, while all of that is happening, something extraordinary is occurring inside the silver market that almost nobody is talking about. Something that has been building quietly for months inside the vaults of COMEX in New York. A structural mathematical crisis that was already reaching its breaking point before the first missile was ever fired. And when you see the numbers, the real numbers, the ones the banks do not want trending on your social media feed, you are going to understand exactly why the question in today's title is not crazy. It is, in fact, the most important financial question of 2026. Silver at $3,947 per ounce. Is it crazy, or is it the only number the math actually permits? The spot price of silver this morning is trading at approximately $83.39 per ounce. Gold is sitting at $5,090 per ounce, down slightly from Friday as profit takers rotate into the surging dollar and oil. But here is the number that truly stopped me dead this morning. Not the spot price. The COMEX number. Because as of the end of February 2026, according to CME Group data, the registered silver inventory available for immediate physical delivery has fallen to 86.1 million ounces. 86 million ounces. And standing against that 86 million ounces, the paper obligations demanding delivery this very month represent 528 million ounces of notional exposure. That is a ratio of more than 4.6 ounces of paper silver for every single ounce of real, physical, deliverable metal sitting in those vaults. And then comes the detail that should send chills down your spine. Welcome to the global market. If you are new here, this is where I break down the data that the mainstream media is not connecting. Hit subscribe right now because this situation is developing by the hour. And before I go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think the banks can hold this paper-silver system together? Or is the math already irreversible? I want to know what you see. Let me break this down for you because if you do not understand what is happening simultaneously in the Middle East and inside the COMEX vaults, you cannot understand why silver is sitting at the edge of the most violent repricing event in modern financial history. And I am going to walk you through every single layer of this because every layer connects, every layer feeds the next one. And by the time I am done, you will see why nobody, not Bloomberg, not the Wall Street Journal, not CNBC, is connecting these two stories into one picture. Because the picture, when you see it in full, is almost too large to believe. Let us start with the war. On the evening of February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iran in what they codenamed Operation Epic Fury. Within hours, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was dead. Think about what that means. The leader who had guided Iran's nuclear ambitions and proxy networks for over 30 years was eliminated in the opening hours of the campaign. Iran's response was immediate and overwhelming. According to Al Jazeera, Tehran has since fired over 500 ballistic and naval missiles and nearly 2,000 drones at targets across the region. 27 waves of attacks under what Iran is calling Operation True Promise. U.S. forces have struck more than 3,000 targets inside Iran. The Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington calculated that the first 100 hours of this conflict cost the United States $3.7 billion, nearly $900 million per day. And that number is climbing. Nobody is talking about what this means for the oil market in the way they should be. Because this is not just a war. This is a direct assault on the single most important choke point in the global energy supply chain. The Strait of Hormuz is a waterway roughly 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. 20% of the world's daily oil passes through it. 20% of global liquefied natural gas passes through it. Iran's coastline forms the northern edge of that strait. And Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has now made explicitly clear that any ship attempting passage will be targeted. Shipping giant Maersk has suspended all Middle East operations. EU naval mission Aspides confirmed to Reuters that vessels are receiving IRGC radio broadcasts stating no ships are permitted to pass. This is not a threat on paper. This is a de facto blockade. And Qatar's energy minister Saad al-Kaabi warned on March 6th that if this war continues, other Gulf producers may be forced to halt exports entirely and declare force majeure. His exact framing, according to multiple reports, this will bring down economies of the world. Do you understand what I am saying? This is not a regional conflict. This is a direct attack on the global economic bloodstream. Oil above $100 per barrel is not a problem. It is a signal. It is the market telling you that everything priced in oil is about to be repriced. Every single product transported by a truck, every factory that runs on fuel, every farm that runs on diesel, every airline ticket, every food item on a grocery shelf, all of it gets repriced when oil crosses $100 and stays there. The last time this happened, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, inflation hit over 9% in the United States and over 11% in the United Kingdom. That was with the Strait of Hormuz still fully open. We have never seen the strait actually closed. The analysts at MST Marquee have already warned that a prolonged Hormuz closure could be 3 times as severe as the Arab oil embargo of the 1970s. And here is what nobody is telling you. When I say the 1973 oil crisis, I want you to really feel what that moment meant. In October of 1973, Arab OPEC members cut oil production and embargoed the United States in response to U.S. support for Israel in the Yom Kippur War. The price of oil quadrupled in 3 months. Gasoline rationing hit American cities. GDP collapsed. Inflation exploded. And what happened to gold? In 1971, gold was $23 per ounce because Nixon had just severed the dollar's link to gold. By January 1980, 9 years later, after 2 oil shocks, after the Iranian Revolution, after double-digit inflation, gold was $850 per ounce. That was a 36-fold increase. And silver in that same period went from under $2 per ounce in 1971 to its peak of $50 per ounce in January 1980, a 25-fold increase in roughly 9 years. Nobody is talking about this. Nobody is sitting on television connecting the oil shock of 2026 to the historical precedent of 1973. But the connection is direct. It is undeniable. And the man who does not know his history is going to watch what happens next with his jaw on the floor, wondering how nobody saw it coming. Now I want to bring you back to COMEX, because if the geopolitical story is the lit match, the COMEX silver situation is the room full of gasoline. And you need to understand this structure completely to grasp why the number in today's title is not fantasy. Let me give you the architecture. COMEX, the commodity exchange, part of CME Group, the world's largest metals futures market, runs on a system of paper contracts. Each standard silver futures contract represents 5,000 ounces of silver. When a contract expires, the holder can either cash settle, take the dollar equivalent, or stand for physical delivery and demand the actual metal be delivered to them from a COMEX-registered vault. The system assumes that only a small minority of contract holders will ever demand physical delivery. This is the foundational assumption. This is the assumption that is now shattering. Here is the data you need. According to CME Group records, by the end of February 2026, registered silver in COMEX vaults, that is, silver actually tagged and available for immediate delivery, not silver sitting in inventory under other classifications, had fallen to 86.1 million ounces. That is a 31% decline from just a few months prior, and this collapse did not happen gradually. In just 1 week in January 2026 alone, 33 to 40 million ounces were withdrawn from COMEX vaults. In 7 days, 26% of registered inventory vanished in a single week. Compare that to January 2025, where the typical monthly withdrawal was between 1 and 5 million ounces. We went from 1 to 5 million ounces being withdrawn in a typical January to 33 to 40 million ounces leaving in 1 week. That is a 7 to 10 times acceleration in physical demand. And this is not speculative buying. This is industrial users, sovereign buyers, and institutional funds demanding the actual metal because they no longer trust the paper system to deliver it when they need it. Now look at the March 2026 contract. The March contract is COMEX's primary delivery month. On the very first notice day for March, according to CME Group data, 10,526 contracts, representing 52.63 million ounces of silver, were stood for delivery. 52.63 million ounces standing for delivery, against 86.1 million ounces of registered inventory. That is 61% of total deliverable supply demanded on the very first day. Think about what that means. If delivery requests track even close to the pace of January 2026, COMEX will exhaust its registered inventory before this delivery cycle is finished. And on March 3rd, during that first notice day, 4,540 contracts, 43.1% of standing, demanded delivery in a single day. That is the most extreme physical front-loading in COMEX exchange history. That is industrial users not waiting, not rolling to the next month, not accepting cash settlement. They are demanding the metal, right now, today. And here's what nobody is telling you about the JP Morgan angle. On January 7th, 2026, COMEX data revealed that JP Morgan, one of the world's most powerful bullion banks, issued delivery notices for 8.1 million ounces of silver in a single day. And JP Morgan issued 99% of that total to multiple receiving parties, 99%, when the most powerful bank in the silver futures market is the one delivering the metal, and they are doing it in volumes that dwarf historical norms in what is supposed to be a slow month. You have to ask yourself, what do they know? What are they seeing in their own inventory models? What are they watching in the delivery pipelines that made them move 8.1 million ounces in a single session in January, which is not even a major delivery month? Because here is the answer I keep coming back to. They know that the March crunch was coming. They knew the math was not going to work. And the question is not whether JP Morgan saw this coming. The question is what they did with that knowledge and whether any of it protects the rest of us. Now let me show you the math that leads to $3,947 per ounce of silver, because this is the heart of today's video, and I want to walk through it precisely so that you understand that this number did not come from a fever dream. It came from a calculation that uses publicly available data points that almost every analyst is looking at in isolation. Nobody is putting them together in the same model. Let us do that right now. The first input is global above-ground investable silver. Total above-ground silver is estimated at approximately 1.7 billion ounces, but the vast majority of that is locked in jewelry, industrial applications, photography, and other non-monetary forms. The true monetary and investment-grade silver available globally, silver held in ETFs, private vaults, COMEX warehouses, central bank reserves, and sovereign wealth funds, is estimated by analysts at Silver Institute at approximately 200 to 300 million ounces. Let us use a generous 250 million ounces. The second input is the monetary base. The United States M2 money supply currently stands at approximately $21.5 trillion. This number has expanded by over 40% since 2020. Every dollar that was created since 2020 chases the same physical goods, including physical silver. This is not theory, this is arithmetic. Now the third input is the COMEX multiplier. We currently have 528 million ounces of notional silver exposure in the March contract alone, and registered deliverable inventory of 86.1 million ounces. That is a paper-to-physical ratio of 6.1 to 1. If you then look at global OTC silver derivatives, the unregulated over-the-counter swaps, forwards, and paper silver instruments held by bullion banks globally, independent analysts estimate the total paper silver in the system at approximately 10 to 12 billion ounces of notional exposure, 10 to 12 billion ounces, against global above-ground investable silver of perhaps 250 million ounces. That is a ratio of between 40 and 48 to 1, 48 paper ounces for every 1 physical ounce of real investable silver on the planet. Now apply the monetary debasement calculation. If we anchor the U.S. national debt, currently at approximately $36 trillion, to the quantity of gold in Fort Knox at 361 million troy ounces, gold would need to be priced at approximately $99,000 per ounce to fully back the national debt at a 1-to-1 ratio. Even at 20% backing, which is the historical norm for sound monetary systems before the gold standard was fully abandoned, you get a gold price of approximately $19,800 per ounce. Apply the historical gold-to-silver monetary ratio of 15.5 to 1, which is the ratio at which silver and gold existed in the Earth's crust, and at which they traded for most of recorded monetary history. $19,800 divided by 15.5 equals $1,277 per ounce of silver. That is conservative. That does not account for the physical scarcity premium. That does not account for the industrial demand acceleration. Now add the COMEX scarcity premium. If physical silver becomes physically scarce, and the delivery data suggests that moment may already have arrived, the premium over the paper spot price can expand dramatically. In the Hunt Brothers crisis of 1980, silver reached $50 when the broader paper silver market was only slightly above the physical price. But if we experience an actual COMEX delivery failure where the paper price and the physical price genuinely bifurcate, as happened briefly with palladium in 2001, as happened with nickel on the London Metal Exchange in 2022 when the LME suspended trading and canceled billions in trades, the physical silver price could detach entirely from the COMEX paper price. At a 40-to-1 paper-to-physical ratio, if the physical price is driven to 3 times the paper spot price, which is conservative compared to what happened in palladium and nickel, and if the paper spot price simultaneously rises to approximately $1,300 per ounce, reflecting monetary debasement at even 15% gold standard backing, you get a physical silver premium that brings you within striking distance of $3,947 per ounce. And silver was classified as a U.S. critical mineral. Let me say that again because almost nobody covered this. In late 2025, silver was officially added to the U.S. critical minerals list, recognizing its indispensable role in green energy, advanced electronics, and national defense. The same month that happened, according to the Financial Content Wire Services report from March 4, 2026, solar manufacturers, electric vehicle companies, and defense contractors began bypassing COMEX entirely and negotiating offtake agreements directly with silver miners. They are not going through the exchange. They are going around it. They are pulling physical metal out of the system before the system has a chance to default on them. The technical term for this is disintermediation. And when the industrial users who need physical silver for their factories abandon the paper futures market and go straight to the source, the supply available through COMEX shrinks further. Think about what happened in 2003 during the Iraq War. When the United States invaded Iraq, oil markets did not immediately spike into chaos. In the first days of the invasion, oil actually fell as traders assumed a quick victory. But within weeks, as the true complexity of the conflict became clear, and as supply disruptions began cascading through global markets, oil began a sustained climb that lasted for 5 years and ultimately drove the metal to $147 per barrel in 2008. The initial market reaction told you almost nothing about the ultimate outcome. The structural supply dynamics told you everything. And right now, the structural supply dynamics in silver are screaming something that the spot price has not yet fully reflected. Because here's a number that defines the depth of this problem. The global silver supply has been in a structural deficit for 5 consecutive years. 5 years of consuming more silver than the world mines. The 2026 deficit is projected by the Silver Institute to approach 200 million ounces. That is 200 million ounces more silver being consumed than produced this year alone. Cumulative deficit over 6 years, approximately 820 million ounces. And yet the total COMEX and Shanghai Exchange inventory drawdown over this same period accounts for only 161 million ounces, roughly 19.6% of that cumulative deficit. Where did the other 80% go? Into solar panels that cannot be economically recycled, into electric vehicle components with a 5 to 10 year life cycle and less than 30% recovery rates. I want to tell you about Shanghai too, because this is a piece of the puzzle that nobody on American financial media is discussing with the seriousness it deserves. Shanghai Gold Exchange silver inventory fell from 559 tons in November 2025 to 318.5 tons by February 2026. That is a 43% decline in 3 months. Combined with the COMEX drawdown, you now have the 2 largest silver exchanges on the planet simultaneously hemorrhaging physical inventory at the fastest rate in recorded history. And China has designated silver as a strategic asset and imposed export restrictions. China, one of the world's largest silver producers, has effectively removed itself as a supply source for the rest of the world's silver market. You cannot import Chinese silver. You cannot access Chinese inventory to solve your COMEX delivery problem. Now let me give you 3 scenarios. I want you to understand that I am not here to predict chaos for the sake of generating clicks. I am here to show you the mathematics of 3 possible outcomes. And I need you to understand that in all 3 scenarios, in every possible version of how this plays out, silver does not go down. Every path forward is a higher path. The only debate is how much higher and how fast. Scenario 1 is the limited case. The U.S.-Israel campaign achieves a relatively fast military objective in Iran within the next 3 to 4 weeks, as President Trump has suggested on Truth Social. A ceasefire framework is negotiated. The Strait of Hormuz reopens to traffic within 30 to 45 days. Oil retreats from over $100 toward the $70 to $80 range. The Fed holds rates steady at its March 18th meeting, as widely expected, but signals a more accommodative posture given softening economic data. In this scenario, the best case for the world, gold holds above $5,000 per ounce and consolidates in the $5,000 to $5,500 range for the year. Silver, which is already trading at $83 and change today, a price that would have been unthinkable just 18 months ago, holds above $75 and grinds back toward $100 and beyond as the COMEX delivery crisis does not resolve just because the war slows down. The structural deficit is still 200 million ounces per year. The registered inventory is still at multi-decade lows. The industrial demand acceleration does not stop. Silver in Scenario 1 closes 2026 between $90 and $110 per ounce. Your position in physical silver is significantly above current levels. Scenario 2 is the escalation case. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, according to CNN's March 9th reporting, takes an aggressive posture to consolidate power and demonstrate that Iran has not been broken. Iran launches retaliatory strikes on energy infrastructure across Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed or restricted for 60 to 90 days. Oil climbs toward $130 to $150 per barrel. The inflationary shock hits U.S. CPI at over 8% within 60 days. The Fed is trapped. It cannot raise rates with equity markets falling, and it cannot cut rates with oil at $150. In this scenario, the dollar weakens significantly as the dual mandate becomes impossible to execute. Gold breaks through its all-time high near $5,600 and targets $6,500 to $7,000 by end of 2026. Silver, with the COMEX delivery math still unresolved, drives through $150. The paper-to-physical ratio continues to widen. At $150 spot, the physical premium in a constrained market could push actual physical silver to $225 to $250 per ounce. The stackers who bought at $83 today are looking at a 2.7 to 3 times gain. In this scenario, every financial advisor who told their clients precious metals were a fringe investment looks like a fool. Scenario 3 is the full crisis case. It is the scenario I am not predicting. But 2 days ago, it was not even on the table. Today it is. Full COMEX delivery default. Silver's paper pricing mechanism breaks. Physical silver bifurcates entirely from the COMEX spot price. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed for 6 months or more. Global oil scarcity drives inflation above 12%. The Fed loses control of the inflation narrative. Central banks globally begin emergency accumulation of physical precious metals. Just as the 2020 market crash revealed that the emperor had no clothes in the treasury market, a 2026 COMEX silver default would reveal that the commodity futures system, which underpins pricing for everything from food to fuel to metals, has been operating on fractional reserve assumptions that cannot survive the moment physical demand becomes existential. In this scenario, silver's physical price does not trade at the paper spot price. It trades at a multiple of the paper spot price. The paper is $200, the physical is $600. And for those who have run the full monetary debasement model, the monetary repricing that follows a loss of confidence in fiat-settled commodity exchanges leads you to the number in the title of today's video: $3,947 per ounce. Crazy? The 1980 silver run from $2 to $50 seemed crazy in 1972. The gold run from $35 to $850 seemed crazy in 1970. The math is what it is. I am not predicting scenario 3. But 2 days ago, it was not even on the table. Today it is. This is the environment that breeds generational wealth transfers. This is the environment in which those who hold physical precious metals outside the banking system find themselves on the right side of history. The number $3,947 per ounce of silver is not a prediction. It is a mathematical output from a model that takes the paper-to-physical ratio, applies the monetary debasement calculation to gold, uses the historical 15-to-1 silver ratio, and adds a physical scarcity premium in a COMEX default scenario. Whether that scenario plays out is the great unknown. But what is not unknown is the direction. What is not unknown is that every structural force at work right now points in the same direction. Up. Drop a comment below and tell me, which scenario do you think plays out? The limited case where silver holds above $90? The escalation case where silver breaks $150 this year? Or the full crisis case where the COMEX math finally forces a reckoning nobody on Wall Street is prepared for? I read every comment, I respond to the best ones, and share this video with someone who holds their savings in a bank account right now. They need to see this, because the bank account holder is the person holding paper in a world where paper is becoming dangerous. Show them the math. Let them make their own decision.